will be in every different community. Oh, we're recording. We're recording already, Linda? Wow, she's fast. And they'll be in Revere next week, and it's just walk up, no appointment necessary. So I guess if you go on their site, you'll find out all the information.
Cool. Yeah, I'll do that.
Yeah, definitely. She said it's right on the mgb.org.
Everybody, how's it going?
Hey, Brian.
Very good. How are you?
Good.
Hey, everyone.
Look at left field sprucing up their backgrounds.
You know, I apparently didn't read the memo.
We'll send you the JPEG. We just had to get it fresh, hot off the press.
Well,
I had to see if it worked.
backgrounds cut my hair off because it doesn't recognize the hair color. So I'm gonna use it.
Oh, that's true.
So no
Right.
backgrounds for you, Linda.
Nope. You all get to see what's behind me every time.
So you either have to paint your room or dye your hair. That's what I'm hearing.
One or the other.
It reminds me of my phone in nighttime mode. Does anyone have that where it goes to black with white
Yeah.
letters or black and bright letters? Yeah.
Gets weird.
It's appropriate. It's dark out at 5:30 these days.
I heard, speaking of which, I was listening to the weather and watching the news of all things. When plus time you guys did that, huh? But the weather guy said we're not gonna reach 5 o'clock sunset until like February 2nd.
That's depressing.
Yep.
What are you doing, James?
I'm sorry. You see my background. It's appropriate.
Can you Photoshop in some little white things like it's gonna snow, James?
Yeah. I'll work on it. Yeah. So I think, yeah, we're up to 6 or maybe 7 with Stacy.
Oh no, we've got
I
more.
think we're up to 7,
Yeah.
8.
Oh, Carl joined too, yeah. That's it.
We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah.
8. Okay, did you want to get started, everyone?
I think so. I see a lot of
Yes.
nods, so let's do that.
Sounds good. Okay, welcome everyone to the Revere High School Building Committee Project Meeting number 24. Today is Thursday, December 2nd, 2021, and the time is 5:31 p.m. Linda, could you take the roll call, please?
Yes, I see Mike Party.
Present.
And Mike, nice of you to join us from your vacation. Very diligent.
I know the sunny confines of Revere. You're welcome.
Excellent. I don't see the mayor yet. Stacy Bronson Rizzo.
Here.
Susan Gravellisi.
Here.
And Dr. Kelly, I don't see her yet. Carl Svensson.
Yeah.
And John Corella.
Here.
Jennifer Hayes.
Here.
I think I saw a note from Rich Biscay that he was not going to join today. Don Ciramella. Let's see. Nick Rystrom.
Here.
Jerry Visconti. I don't see him. Patrick Keith.
Here.
And I see we also have Dr. Kelly that just joined.
Here.
Excellent. All right. To start off with, Brian, I'm just going to go through housekeeping to get a motion to approve the meeting minutes from our last meeting, which would have been the November 18th meeting minutes.
Motion to approve the minutes for November 18th.
Excellent.
Second,
And Susan, second. That motion is out there for approval. Roll call, Mike Riccardi. Mike, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, now I can hear you.
There we are. That was a yes, Linda.
Okay, thank
Sorry.
you.
Sorry about that.
Yes.
And Susan,
yes.
Dr. Kelly,
Yes.
Carl Svensson,
Yes.
John Corella,
Yes.
Jennifer Hayes.
Yes.
And I still don't see Rich Risque or Don Ciaramella. Nick Rystrom,
Yes.
thank you, and Patrick Key.
Yes.
Excellent. Brian, I am going to kick it over to you, or is it Dawn today?
I think it's probably gonna start with Dawn, if you're okay with that, Dawn. And we have probably
am.
about 40 or so slides to get to. We have a good deal of stuff. So definitely speak up if you have questions, but we're gonna try to keep a good pace through this.
No problem, Brian. I was planning on doing that. So let me just go into full screen mode here. And I think Bob is actually going to kick us off, if I'm not mistaken, Bob, and then I'll take back
Yep.
over.
Yep, I've got that. So just kind of high level. So this is where we are. We always start off here, entertain any additional thoughts on pros and cons as everybody mulls the options, week to week, but we're down to two options, one on obviously Aracola and the other one on Wonderland. And we were asked, despite the fact that we've moved past renovation, to take another look at the existing site and see with the new configuration, the new building, if there was any way to re-examine the merits of keeping the existing field house. And for those of you who might not remember, the reason we would even try this is that the existing field house is significantly larger than what the MSBA would allow. We can get creative and we'll show you some options. We've actually got two major things to show you. One is we'll talk through this option, which what you're seeing here is the current 1CB plan, but we've lopped off the gymnasium wing, which would have been on the right-hand side, where we're now showing a multi-purpose field. And we're keeping the existing gym, adding to it the central or the district offices, as well as the locker room areas. This would require students to travel through the performing arts wing and out to the existing field house. We thought to kind of soften that blow of just leaving the building, we'd at least try to string it along by locating some appropriate programs. So that little white rectangle that you see between the new construction and the existing is community health, possibly the Coast Collaborative program, maybe even health classrooms. We would look at some programs that would want to be relatively independent, but also would relate to the health and wellness programs overall. So our thinking would be, we can split hairs and talk about how much of this is enclosed. We assume it would be entirely covered, the pathway, and we're not sure that we would recommend enclosing it all the way, only because there may be a desire to connect to the neighboring streets. If there isn't, then certainly we could enclose a pathway. The immediate read on this is that it becomes a little bit more challenging to use the site efficiently. Technically, we're able to fit the baseball diamond, and we're not exactly sure the multi-purpose field will fit in its current program size. So that's something that, because we're working at a feasibility level, it's going to take sort of a finer grain, existing survey and a little bit more of an exact plan to know if we can get the full multi-purpose field in there, but for conceptual purposes, we think we can. The parking overall, the surface parking has been knocked down to 321 spaces. And because we're building less new construction, less footprint, the underground parking is also knocked down to 275. So in this scheme, we're down from the 650, would be below 600 overall. And the other, I guess, pros or cons that I can see in this are that it separates the fields. So I won't weigh in on whether that's completely a con, but I think it is a substantial difference between the other options. And we can zoom in. Next slide will take us just a little bit into the planning elements. So here you can see some of the program pieces that come together just for the ground floor level. It's going to need a lot more work and detail. This is really just a quick study to see if it's feasible. And I think I'll defer to others too for what they see as the pros and cons. Ty, I don't know if there's anything else that you wanted to add to this as far as observations, or anybody from the team, if you want to.
Sure, I would, and you hit on it. I mean, Ericola Park is now split in two, essentially, in this design, with the multi-purpose field over on the right. It's also incredibly close to the building facade. You're probably going to want sports netting along the end there. So essentially, you're ended up with, netting in front of the whatever's happening on the architecture there. And we've also shown a retaining wall on that corner of the multi-purpose field on the right, and deleted any head-in parking along that driveway. So its circulation might stay there, but parking is eliminated from that side. And the garage entries, I think they were cleaner on the other design. Here, there's some awkwardness that we'd want to study further. But the idea that the two locations where we came in on 1CB seemed to work a little bit nicer.
Great. I'll continue into the next study unless anybody has specific questions. We can always come back to this one. I think when you
Bob, no, the only thing that catches my eye here is, am I seeing the community health being, is that the, for the community?
yellow.
Yeah, that's
That's
where is it? And maybe as you talk to the next scheme, point out where it is current in the other scheme too, please.
Sure, absolutely. So Dawn, you can move ahead to the next one. This is just a ground level plan. I realize it's very small, but as far as putting all the program pieces together, you can see in this case, we've got the separate central admin building in the far left corner. And as far as James, to answer your question, you can see where the gymnasium wing is. It's locker rooms at the lower level. JROTC out at the far end, which has actually a pretty good relationship to the gym because they have marching and drill space. And then the yellow and purple that Dawn's circling right now is the community health. And this is at ground level, and we think it's an ideal location. There's still the chance to move things around, but early on in the visioning, we talked about distinct areas and zones.
In the school, probably.
Could you ask folks to mute themselves if they're not speaking, please? Debbie in particular.
Thanks.
Thank you.
So it's located here at the ground level. So it's basically lobby entry level. That allows it to have the potential for its own access. You can see along the drive that goes along the south side of the building.
Nice.
That's true of Coast Collaborative too. So I think when we had the user group meetings, there was a desire to maybe create the potential for the direct access or secondary controlled access to those programs. Still can be developed further. And in the end, it also locates all the health and wellness programs as really kind of a wing, which they can feed off each other. And that includes on the levels that go up higher. Dawn will present later. Health classrooms are included in that. So great resource for not just the students and the PE health and wellness teachers, but also for after hours. So I think that's probably this is probably a preferred location than separating it outside of the building entirely, but. Next slide, Don.
Bob,
What
can I ask
we-
you a question?
Absolutely.
I'm looking at the slide that is titled "Study to Keep Existing Field House," and on the bottom left-hand corner, where the near home plate of the baseball diamond, across from that is that triangle field. That's I don't
Yeah.
know how that's been identified. Has that ever been? Have we ever examined if that's something that we could gain access to? Because if we could perhaps use that and then adjust the streeting for East Mountain Ave, that might add a substantial amount of space.
Yeah, we don't have it visible entirely on this slide. It is a much smaller, it's not anywhere in the realm to be a dimensional field. It won't make up for the multi-purpose field being on the other side of the site, but there is potential to explore that for a number of things, including green space. It does require street crossing, but.
And John, I have done a little looking into that. It's defined as a park. So if it's something that one way or the other, the school project needs to use, it would get sort of swallowed into the Article 97 park replacement. So if something ever did go there, it would just have to be offset somewhere else. I know it's just a level field of grass, but it'd just have to be offset somewhere.
Is it absurd to think that maybe the East Mountain Ave could be cut into two different roads, and that road access could be gained as well, or that road area separating that field from what's now presently the RHS campus?
I think it's something we could talk to the traffic consultants about, but I'd worry about the size of those adjacent streets and really routing that road around it. But I think it's something that we could talk a little more with the design team in the city and the traffic folks about.
I think this is also a location where it's not as extreme at this point, but there is a grade change. So I think, Ty, we have a little bit of a retaining wall down on that south edge. Is that right? Or am I just looking at fencing?
Correct. Well, it's likely that the infield is generally higher than the outfield of baseball. So we anticipate some kind of wall along there if that's how the baseball field ends up being graded out, which is likely.
Yeah, I think grading would be the biggest challenge to finding a good way to use that area. Because there is a pretty significant drop off from East Mountain down to where that home plate's going to be.
Don, you can probably move ahead too, and we can come back to all this. What I think was actually a major milestone for us we've constantly been working on and massaging what we can do with the program that you have. I think in our earlier iterations, we knew that we could match the 3 basketball courts that exist in the current field house. We didn't think we could get a running track in. We knew we could get a walking track in. But what we've been asked to do since then is take a closer look, working within the MSBA constraints, but also look at adjacent spaces and see if there's the possibility to get the full running track in. And what you're looking at here is a diagram. All these colors represent different MSBA program spaces, but it doesn't mean they're different rooms entirely. So what we're looking at in yellow, the plan on the site is showing the ground level. So that's the locker rooms, and that's what we've got circled in the oval. And then 1 floor up is the gymnasium, and that's true in all the options. So what we're looking at in yellow on that 2nd floor is the PE space. It includes gym stations, and then to the far left, weights and fitness. And that's something the MSBA has already weighed in on and has approved. The lower left corner is special education space, which is adaptive PE. And although it looks like a separate rectangle, it's really just a continuation of the gymnasium. So it helps complete the 3 courts, and you can see some of the track space. The idea is that for that adaptive PE program, that they feel and are truly included in that space, even though it'll be scheduled differently for special needs students. And then on the far right in green is ROTC, marching and drill space. And we've co-located this and proportioned it so that it helps us complete the track. Dawn, you can go to the next slide, I think. So this is just zooming in, and what I'm highlighting here are some of the opportunities, I guess, and constraints. So we are permitted through the MSBA to have 6 PE stations. One of those is called an alternative. It's the weights and fitness. On the far left, what we've done is taken about half the space, half of 3,000 square feet, and called that weight room, which is on the far left. And then we've used the other half, so 1,500 square feet for fitness, thinking this could be for aerobic, dance, a number of things. So it could basically be really just a flat floor, not necessarily any fixed equipment, and that would allow the track to kind of overlay for athletic purposes after hours. On the right-hand side of the fitness, you can see a dark line that represents a segment of wall. We're not sure we need to have that, but we actually think it might be useful because it helps define what the MSBA is going to be looking for as a weights and fitness room. But it also could be useful for climbing walls and for other things, including teaching walls within the gym. There's definitely plenty of margin between the basketball courts and that wall. And there's plenty of margin, even though it might not look like it, between it and the track. So the question might be just how much wall do we want? Do we want any wall, or do we just want an operable wall to define that weights and fitness so it can basically disappear if it needs to? We're doing the same thing on the far right with the ROTC drill space. So we've got just a segment of wall there as well. Again, we think it might be useful. And where the wall ends and we're crossing the track, we're suggesting those could be roll down curtains or something if needed to more clearly define ROTC space. What I'm showing in the middle, what's colored yellow is the 18,000 square feet that the MSBA will allow us to build as a gymnasium. So by having these little segments of walls, it just helps reinforce what they see as the maximum. No matter how many gym stations you're allowed, they would want you to convert them into other spaces like weights and fitness. They don't technically want to see a field house space. But the strategy that we're showing you here, we've done it on a number of schools. Essex Tech has not exactly this, but has a raised track that was afforded by reproportioning some of the gym space. And Lowell High School has almost exactly this, which was in similar fashion done with adaptive PE and ROTC space, kind of co-joining with the gymnasium space. So the bottom line is we get a dimensional track, 4 lanes, which also matches what exists now, 55-meter straightaway with runoff space. And then, of course, the center can be used for shot put, long and triple jump. So we think this is basically a win, and ultimately, being part of the new construction would certainly be more a part of the heart of the school, really kind of connecting the health and wellness programs a lot better to the rest of the programs.
And just, I'm going to jump in quick, and I know Nick's got his hand up, but we sort of asked Perkins Eastman to really analyze this and really focus on, can we get an indoor track here? Because that was one of the 2 driving reasons that we heard from you folks on why we needed to study keeping the existing field house. As Bob noted earlier, the field house is simply bigger than what we can build here. That was one item. This is still overall less athletic square footage. However, the other item was the new building didn't support indoor track. So the indoor track team would have had to go elsewhere. So we met with the athletic director, with Dr. Kelly and John, to just sort of buzz through what it would take to keep the indoor track. And I think this is a really interesting solution. I know some folks might have a little tough time viewing this in 3D, but this is a very flexible gymnasium. And I think the higher level point I wanted to throw out there is, with this gym layout, the indoor track program stays. Nick, I know you had your hand up.
Thanks, Brian. So I was just wondering if anybody has any insight into the MSBA's thought process around the maximum gym size not being big enough for a track.
Yeah, we've had a number of conversations because we've also worked on some of the larger schools in the state, in the Commonwealth, and the things that we've heard them say repeatedly is that their focus is on academics, not on athletics. We know that, we're trying to be creative because athletic programs and, are really important and important as a supplement and help a lot of kids really even better connect educationally overall. But the MSBA kind of draws that distinction. They don't, for example, have in their space standards athletic team or trainers rooms or uniform storage or athletic coaches offices. They just don't effectively allow it. So we were always forced to kind of work creatively to get those needs met. The thing I've also heard them say is their reason for the limit on the 18,000 is they drew a line in the sand, not wanting to promote natatoriums, pools of any kind, nor field houses outright. They see it, in their words, as not being equitable to communities that either can't afford it or don't have a large enough population to have a field house. So whether the logic is right or wrong, they're doing it in their mind for the sake of equity. And I guess I'd also piggyback on that. I've heard them say a number of times, they're trying to spread the dollars across the Commonwealth. So that's why they have so many caps and other figures. But there's another location where they've done this as well. Auditoriums, they've capped the size of. So even though you could have, or in the case of Lowell, you could justify an auditorium much larger than their cap, it's just a cap, and they won't allow you to even build a building beyond a certain size. I think it's 13,300 square feet, which again, we actually have in this program as well. I hope that answers the question. And left field, you may want to speak from your own experience on this too.
You pretty much nailed that, Bob. I mean, it is, unfortunately, it's a hard line of they just don't get bigger. It's one of those items that they won't say you can get bigger, you just have to pay for all of it. It just can't get any bigger, period.
Okay, yeah, that helps. I'm disappointed that, I don't think we're trying to get bigger than, anyone else or bigger than normal. It'd be nice to be able to have a track that, fits in the school. That's all. But if it's a hard line, that's what it is. Thanks.
Yep. So, and just to be clear though, this is in the all new scheme. So we believe that with some creative use of some dividing walls that we can discuss, if this is the scheme that moves forward into schematic, we can get the track in there. We can keep indoor track.
Right. Hey, Brian, I know Mike, you can hold on one more minute if I can belabor this point. Brian, can you get into a little bit more of the nuts and bolts of what it really means to quote unquote keep the field house, and the costs, and then the schedule extension too, or lack of a gym versus this.
Yeah, we'll touch upon the schedule part of it, some slides a little bit later, but when that scheme with the field house, basically you should consider that in your mind a full gut reno. We'd be cutting some building around the field house, stripping the entire exterior, stripping the roof, all the mechanical systems would go. It would basically come down to steel and concrete, and we build it back up as a new building. And it is most likely a slightly longer schedule to get that done, and we can hit that in a few slides later down the road. But keep the field house means strip it all the way down to steel and concrete, and then build it back up.
Which would potentially, I'm not out of line saying that would be more cost than what we're seeing on the screen. And as you just mentioned, it would be potentially a longer schedule, and what I thought was the largest impact, potentially opening up the new school without a gym.
That's probably the biggest impact, and we'll hit that a little bit in the schedule. It's going to be that there's a 1 to 2 year span where there isn't a gym. That probably is the most impact. But We'll have some updated numbers in the coming meeting, but I think it most likely will be a bit more money. That big piece of impact is no gym for a couple of years.
Yeah, and I think we can move on and show you the full option floor plan. I think Dawn's going to take us through that. It didn't really change the size of the building. It fit within the parameters that we're already working with.
Let me just make sure, Mike Picard, are you okay? Did you had a hand up? I'm not sure I see it.
Question.
Yep.
It looked like he took it.
With the indoor track, where I don't see like where bleachers would be, or like the stands for the.
Yeah, so we actually are showing bleachers in their closed position on both the north and south side of the field house. What we've seen
Okay. So,
in when there are competition events is that some of these are also movable, so they're moved out into the center of the oval, basically, to get some seating. We haven't even explored, but I guess we could actually have some fixed in place with those wing walls that we have on the edges.
That's an interesting point too, but yeah, they're sort of shown rolled up here, Mike. Right now, it's two big segments on the top and bottom facing the main left to right competition court. But Bob, I think there's an interesting idea there of there's a few walls to work with here as far as bleachers go.
Yeah, actually, that would be a great benefit, because then that creates, when there's competition, anything, it creates almost a stadium, indoor stadium.
okay, thanks, Bob.
Can I just weigh in for one thing here as well? I love this, by the way. Thank you for taking the time to really think about how we could make a track fit here. The one thing I do want to say about when I look at the dash lines that go on the ends of, say, where the JROTC is, that cover the track. I'm thinking about use during the day and really being able to separate that space if JROTC is doing some daytime work and there are gym classes happening in the yellow region, how we can really make sure there's a distinct separation and kids are where they're supposed to be, and it's not easy to just flip through a curtain, and be off program and things of that nature. So I'm wondering, and we had talked a little bit about this when we met with Frank and Dr. Perella, about still thinking along the lines of garage doors in those areas that can be closed when we don't want the whole space open into itself.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely an opportunity. There are a number of options that we can have with kind of folding walls or garage doors, some that actually extend up vertically. So I think we can certainly achieve it. It's just a matter of, we can look at a bunch of different ways of doing it.
I think our base assumption should be that those are real sort of demountable walls. Either they're accordining up, making up a word there, or they're folded into walls, but not like gym divider stuff, not fabric. Sort of architectural garage doors is more maybe how I describe them for lay people, but hard barriers that can shut this down. So the weight and fitness is its own little square. ROTC is its own tall rectangle, and the gym is its own room.
Great, thanks.
Any more questions on that before I will quickly run through the two remaining options? Not a lot has changed except for this gymnasium that we just spoke about at length. This slide is the same as 2 weeks ago. This is updated with the new footprint. So you can see, as Ty mentioned earlier, the impact is not substantial. And I don't believe any of the circulation or parking or anything was impacted. Maybe a little bit on the underground parking. But with that, we've got still approximately 355 underground parking spaces. We've got the main floor, which we've spoken about substantially. This is what has changed from what you saw 2 weeks ago. we put some labels on it for clarity. This is, James asked the question earlier about community health, and this you can see clearly that with the direct connection to the heart of the school and that relationship, as well as the performing arts wing, and then the typical classroom wings have been unchanged. As we move up a level, this represents that gymnasium change that we spoke about. There are the health classroom, some mechanical, and then the junior ROTC. This is the special ed piece of the gym that Bob spoke about, which is really an extension of the main part of the gym, with the weights and fitness here. And the rest of it is unchanged from a few weeks ago. You can just start to see how it, as we build up, we're up on the 3rd floor. So this is open to below. This is a large volume, but you can see how the heart of the school and the media commons with the academic wings are still very much connected. And then lastly, the 4th floor. And I'm trying to go through this quickly because I know what's behind me, which is quite a bit of work that Brian and Leftfield have done on some of the phasing. So I want to give that the ample time that it deserves. And then the massing has just been updated with the gymnasium change. So here's the front entry side from the west. Here it is from the east with the new volume. Moving along to Wonderland, this is pretty much unchanged. That's not to say we couldn't do those gymnasium changes. I think, Bob, we could look at how that potentially could factor in this particular option, if that's of interest. We focused on the other one, recognizing that there was an interest with the keeping the gymnasium versus what it meant for a new construction on that site. But we have done similar plans for this option. So you can see the main floor, we've got the main entry, secondary entry. In this case, central admin is connected to the main building, different than on the existing site. And then as we build up, we've got gymnasium, weights and fitness, community health is adjacent to the auditorium in this particular scheme. And then the classroom wings are pretty much unchanged. We've got the heart of the school, which opens up to the CAF Commons below. And then as we go up a floor, we're on the 3rd floor. Just the gymnasium with the volume, it again is just open to below space. And then lastly, the very top floor and the academic wings. So you can see how that starts to mass out. And then these are the massings that you saw from a few weeks ago and how it sits on the site. So that might have been really brief and hopefully was helpful just to walk you through the building, the floor plans, and the massing. Does anyone have any questions on this? I don't want to breeze through it too quickly if there are questions, but again, I know that Brian and Leftfield have quite a bit to speak about related to schedule and phasing. So I want to give that adequate time.
John, I think you said this, but I want to just make sure that I heard you right.
Sure.
We could, if this is the option that we go with, reconfigure a little bit to have a similar kind of track like we just saw and spent a lot of time on the existing site. Did I hear you correctly?
Yeah, I don't want to speak.
Yeah, I think so.
I mean, basically,
it's the same pieces.
Yeah, it's all the same pieces. So it's reconfiguring to work those on this particular option to be able to accomplish a similar scenario. So we just haven't studied it yet. We wanted to focus on the other one, but given the success that we found on that one, I'm confident we could work through a similar scenario here.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I don't
Any other
see
questions?
any hands up. I'm just scanning around.
Sure. And we
We
can come back to it.
Yeah.
If, yeah,
Dawn, do you want to keep driving? Do you mind clicking on?
I don't mind at all, Brian. And if I miss something, just tell me to move right along to the next slide for you.
Sure. So you can click to the next slide. So we wanted to we revisited the overall schedules both for the existing site option, the Reno option we'll talk about on this slide, and the Wonderland option. We wanted to buzz through what the schedules look like, and then we spent some time breaking down the phasing for the existing site option. And I just want to say in advance that we're going to talk a lot about that existing option tonight because it's the most complex phasing. Wonderland phasing, we don't have drawn up for tonight. It's basically put a fence around it and start building. And when it's done, move you all in. This existing site has a number of sub-phases that we have to sort of sequence. So we wanted to focus on the existing site for now. I just wanted that as a disclaimer on, don't take it as we think that's the only option. So what's on the screen right now is an update of what you saw back at the last phase when we were narrowing down options. And it's mostly similar. So we're in the PSR phase. We're up in that top sort of peach bar. We are getting towards a project selection. That project selection will go through schematic design next spring, summer, and into the fall. Next fall, that star is when we have sort of local and MSBA project approval. That's when it will ultimately have to go to City Council, and we'll be looking to execute what MSBA calls a project funding agreement, a PFA. That there's then a purple little bar in there spanning into 2023 where funding has to be secured. There's some mechanisms through the city that that we'll have to walk through with everybody. I'm sure the city's sort of familiar with doing this in the context of MSBA buildings, since you guys have had a lot of success with that. But all of that doesn't change between any scheme. Basically, everything starts developing a little bit differently in this design development scheme. So early in design development, maybe even a little earlier than we're showing here, we're going to get a construction manager on board. This committee already made the decision to go Chapter 149A, construction manager at risk. So we'll have them on board. They'll be doing estimates. They'll be doing versions of the phasing plans that you're about to see that might vary. We just needed to get our own sort of idea of phasing before we have a contractor, so we can lay the schedule out and have a good idea on how long it's going to take. The key for this site is this early bid package. You see that there's 3 boxes that say bid, bid, bid. We need a very early package in design development that's specifically related to relocating the culvert. So we're trying to get this option. We're going to have to do some work in schematic design early. That ultimately I think is probably going to be a little bit of money spent during schematic design to do a full hydrology report of that whole line end to end, not just on site from where it originates over near Park Avenue to wherever it outfalls. So there's probably some study that's going to need to be done then. We'd be looking for the design team to give us a biddable package on how to relocate that culvert, and we'd be looking to get in the ground the day school is out of session in 2023. So folks move out of that building, students move out of that building, and we'll show you the phasing, but we're looking to get this option started then. That entire first year, 2023, is mostly culvert work. Getting the culvert out of the way. 2024, 2025 is when the bulk of the real building goes up, once the culvert is out of the way. This schedule leads, both schedules for Wonderland and the existing site lead towards a September 2026 return to school. So this one has a little more room because we're able to kind of start very early. We think the Article 97 process, soup to nuts, which will start in schematic design, if this is the site, will take about 13 months. And that still gives us a few months before the earliest we think we could put a shovel in the ground to start moving that culvert. So we think Article 97 isn't really pushing the schedule here at all. And there's ample time to do it. That Article 97 is also, that time frame is when we'd be looking at sort of permitting as well, maybe a little later than that, but neither permitting or Article 97, thank you for circling that, seem to really drive the bus here. We think we have time to do them both, but that getting in the ground in 2023 gives us a little more time out in 2026 to land tech and FF&E, which are independent packages. They don't come through the contractor. We buy them separately, so to speak. So on this site, then the important thing is once kids leave in June, we would start demolition of the existing site. We think about 15 months soup to nuts to demolish that and build all the fields. Now, this schedule would be exactly the same for the keep the field house option until that point where Don's cursor is. And I think there's a chance that in that 15 months, we could strip that building, get the fields around it built and build it back. More than likely, that field house wouldn't be available till later in 2027. I don't think it would really drop out into 2028, but we might need a little longer runway to get that field house renovated and completed. And as I noted, that sets up the gap of where that blue move box is in 2026. You'd be in the Reno scenario, you'd be moving into a building without a gym. So 2026 summer through 2027 fall, the high school would be gymless. And otherwise, it's pretty much the same schedule. If you could jump ahead to the Wonderland, because they're so similar, I'll buzz through that, and then we can just see if folks have questions. But everything on the top bars is the same. The design schedule, the schematic schedule, funding, the time that we'll be looking at design development. But you can see that early bid package for the culvert is gone, and we'd be setting up a kind of more traditional bid the site work in steel off of 60%, and then bid the rest of the building off of the 90 and 100%. So this is a 30-month construction duration going to summer 2026. Same time frame. You can see that there's just a little bit less time for tech. So it's a little tighter on, since we didn't get that early start on this site, and that's due to the eminent domain line, the bottom line here. What you can see is through schematic, if this is the option, we'll start doing the secondary appraisals, and there's a 13-month time frame that we can get eminent domain sort of secured in. However, that blue line you can see extends all the way out for 3 years. That's the time that arguing about the final value of this site could happen. So we believe we can get control of this site as needed by the end of 2023, have the deed and be able to start work. But the financial certainty of would a judge increase the payment would extend all the way out till 2026. And that's definitely something that we'd have to talk in more detail with the city about, is how to cover that risk, not being able to be sure where that final price ends up for multiple years as we're building this building. But overall, the schedules are relatively neutral, and that's sort of what I wanted the committee to hear tonight. They vary a little bit. This one's a little tighter on that tech FF&E move-in timeframe. The other one has the challenge of the culvert, but it actually buys us a little more construction time with a contractor on site, so we can have a little bit more comfortable landing. But generally speaking, I personally think the committee should think of these as schedule neutral. And I'll take a pause and see if anyone has any questions real quick. Looks good to me. No hands. Okay, I'm gonna run to now. We're just gonna break down phasing on, again, the existing site option 1CB, Wonderland straight shot, one phase, build it. Pretty simple. There's also, I think it's important to note that from a school perspective, and Dr. Perella and some other folks have put this out there, a big part of your decision making is Wonderland will not have any interruption to the school while it's being built. This obviously will, building on the existing site. So Patrick, I see your hand up. I'll take a pause.
Sure. And I apologize, about 2 seconds too late, but you just mentioned it, one shot build. I think that's obviously something you should consider, that if there are going to be problems that go awry in the construction, it's more likely on the existing site to have some of those pop up, where when you're dealing with a little bit of a cleaner slab and not having to renovate, such as the field house, and work around the amount of work that's in the area. The chances of for some interruption in construction are probably a little greater on the current site. I mean, wouldn't you think?
Absolutely. It's a much more complex phasing, and it is going to be more impactful to the operations of the school and the existing site. That's undeniable.
Got it.
So we think this breaks down into 3 major phases. And we're going to walk through them in a second, but this, if you're sort of looking back at this is a little bit of a cheat sheet. The first phase is really get the culvert out of the way. And that's pretty much I'm just guessing, I'm saying June 26th here is when maybe we could get site control. And really the reason I really stress that site control is for some of this culvert work, we need to be right up against the building, and we would cut off circulation for vehicles and pedestrians. So we're trying to keep any culvert work around the buildings, that includes RMA, in summers. So we wanted to get in there early in summer, Basically, phase 1A is start culvert work next to RMA and the school. Phase 1B is finish it out in the parking lot. Phase 2 is the major construction of the new building. 2A is really the big phase, 30-month build, and just the last few months of that, we'll show you a slide where we're going to need to take that last summer before the new building opens and again, push a fence right up against the existing school to do some entry loop work and get you into the new building. Last phase 3 here is relatively straight shot. It's demo. So Dawn, if you didn't mind clicking, we'll run through these, what these phases look like here. So this is just a simple markup of parking on the existing site. There's a bit shy of 400 spaces out there. And the big thing about phasing on this site is figuring out where all these people are going to park during construction. So Dawn, if you could click forward once more, the big new thing, we've talked about it, but after running through a pretty significant analysis with this, we think we're going to need Ambrose Field for temporary parking. There's ways, I have some studies that if the committee or folks really want to push back on use of that field for a few years as parking, we could cram some parking around the existing building. In my mind, I think after we lose that big parking lot, we could get creative and maybe get about 100 spots back, but you're still down about 150. We understand that we might be able to use the Central Avenue municipal parking lot for temp parking or maybe construction parking, but that only has 85 spots. So no matter how I went through this, I couldn't replicate existing parking counts without using Ambrose Field for a couple of years. And I know that Ambrose Field is a walk, but if we were to do the other distribute parking around the building and use central parking, it'd be an even further walk for some folks. At least 85 folks would be about a third of a mile away down in that central parking lot. So we really thought that we wanted to get some input on this. We're going to be talking to some folks from the city on Monday about it, but the big key here is that right away, spring 2023, a temporary lot is established on Ambrose that basically replaces that entire lot behind the school. So this again is summer. We would need to get all the way out to the highway and all the way to a manhole, which is, if you see the yellow X right in that little, where we keep calling the bow tie, there's a manhole down in there. The idea is that in this first phase, we're going to replace the culvert from that pinch point, from that manhole out to the highway. We would start from right against the school and work in. That's what those green arrows are telling you, and start from out at the highway and move in, so that by the time school was back in session that year, Dawn, if you could click, we would be able to pull back from in front of the RMA, and we'd be able to pull back from along the school. So this would allow us to, over the winter 2023 into 2024, finish that culvert relocation. And one thing to note that we're still looking at a bit more, and the design team's doing some good work with, is there's a chance that that culvert, if pitch can't be figured out correctly, might need an underground lift station, pump station, however you want to think about it. If we need to do that, there's obviously going to be cost to that. We're going to have some details in the coming weeks about it, but we will need that winter 2023 through spring 2024 to get that thing done. I think this is plenty of time if we're just putting a new pipe in the ground. If we're putting, but we're building this schedule to accommodate if we have to put a pipe in an underground pump station to push this water along. But this gets us up into the first major phase, and which is the next click, Dawn. By the way, the yellow X's are just vehicular entries that would have to be closed by every phase, and the yellow is basically circulation. So this is the major 2-year construction phase. We would just need to take that entire area over. It would be loud, it would be disruptive. The only saving grace here is your traffic patterns are pretty much kept the same. We can keep the same way folks come in off School Street and either go out True or go out Cary. There wouldn't be any connection through to RMA. And one thing to note that I didn't mention before is we're looking at how we would get staff from that temp spot to the building. And I think Putnam Street is going to be the answer. That street actually is a right of way that connects all the way to the high school site. I know it doesn't look like it does now, but there is a right of way down between those two houses on Eastern Avenue. We feel that we would, as part of the project, if this is where temp parking goes, we would basically be putting a real sidewalk out there. We'd be getting people down Putnam and through the site outside of the construction fence. It might take sidewalks, it might take enclosed protected areas, but I know it's not ideal, but again, I think one parking spot, everyone knows where to go, is a little more simple than having about 4 or 5 islands tucked around the building, including that island that John Pirelli, you pointed out on East Mountain. In the other scheme, when I was trying to get the temp parking, I figured we could get 60 or 70 cars there, but again, no matter how we put this together, we were still 100, 150 shy, unless we used Ambrose.
Not
So
only that, Brian, but I think Dawn pointed it out when we were studying this, just while it looks good on paper, the islands and, fitting them in nooks and crannies. If you just imagine, students driving around to each individual lot, trying to find a spot and, oh, this one's full, next, oh, this one's full, next. So the idea of one, just from that point of view, sounds, I know it's on the field, but it'll make traffic and everyone knowing where to go a lot simpler.
Yep. So Don, if we keep clicking here, this the last summer leading into building occupancy in 2026, we need to push that fence towards the building. And if you could just do a quick toggle back and forth, Don, just you see how we're pushing out, we're cutting off all your circulation to Cary and to True, and we're doing that to get the entry loop built. So one way or the other, we got to transition that road to get into that new building. So it's sort of a sub phase. It's just a sub phase where we wouldn't be leaving you with full circulation, but it is a summer. It's intended to be when school is not in session. This is also the time right in that summer leading into new building occupancy that would decommission that temp parking and fully restore Ambrose Field. So I understand that it's definitely both a loss of that field for a couple of years isn't great, and it's a little bit of a walk for staff. The only silver lining for that is that field gets reconditioned as part of this project, put back brand new. If you could click again, Don, this moves us into phase 3. That green zone would be occupied new school. Temporarily, we would have to be bringing traffic in and out, probably on True and Cary. We'd be able to maintain an exit out to the highway. We might even be able to go both directions. I probably should have put 2 direction arrows on all of these. It would need to be studied, but the main point is we see no way of being able to maintain a path from School Street to the new school while we're both doing the western side of this culvert. So from that manhole we talked about earlier out to the School Street, this is when that culvert would get rerouted and put online. This is also when we'd be doing demo and abatement and building those fields. So that just sort of becomes a big island for about a year and a half until those fields are all done. And pausing on this slide for a second, there would be some point in the ad reno scenario, in the field house reno scenario, there would be some point where that orange area would shrink down and be just around the field house, and we would hand over the baseball field so it would be a smaller island. If we can't get it done in the same 15 months, that's what it would look like through the fall of 2027. If in fact it takes more than 15 months, it would just be a smaller orange square for another couple of months while we get that building finished, but the rest of the field could be turned over when it was complete. Mike Picardi, I see your hand up.
Brian, just going back to the last slide where the temporary parking is going on Ambrose. I don't know how big you're planning on that parking lot to be, but I know that the city is currently looking to do a bid for a renovation to the Ambrose playground over there. So I don't know how big that design is going to be, but I wouldn't want to do a whole new playground and then we rip it up in 2 years.
I agree 100%. Yeah, it's a great point, Mike. And I did hear about that. That's some of the questions I'm going to ask of the city next week of what are the extents of that? Let's make sure we stay off of it. In the end, if that can happen independently of the field, it'd be new playground by another project and new field by the high school project. So the goal would be to completely stay off it. And I think we could do that with that green box you see there is basically the same amount of cars as fit in that entire area behind the high school. So I think we could definitely, maybe it wouldn't be that shape is I guess what I'm getting at. But it would, and we would avoid the playground and rebuild the field when we're done. Sounds good. Let's see. I think that was basically it. We'll hit this stuff afterwards. So I wanted to just sort of pause and we've always talked about this site being kind of the most painful in terms of phasing. I think that certainly is true, but we can do it. And I think we can do it in the same amount of time that we could get Wonderland done on, which is a straight shot build. So there's definitely a benefit to that, but it's possible, and it's possible at a pretty fast pace to sort of at least minimize the pain as much as we can. I just want to note that there'd be a lot more study of traffic to get this all right, including exactly how we would tell the contractors to use this site. For starters, I'm going to throw out there that we're going to want all the contractors parking inside the fence. I think we got enough area to do that. That's something that when we're selecting CMs, we're going to have to make clear, because some CMs have a problem with that, an insurance problem with it. I think on this site, if they have that sort of problem, then they're going to fence off a little parking area within the work areas for themselves. So all worker parking, all contractor parking would be in the work zones, not in the occupied school. And we can also tell those contractors where they have to come from, at least major deliveries. They might all come off the highway, et cetera. So there's definitely more study that would have to go into exactly how do we treat these roads, what's one way, what's two way, through all these phases, including the permanent layout here. Anybody have any questions on that phasing? I do not see committee hands. So let's jump into the look ahead, because that'll at least queue up where we're going here. We're pretty close to having the Wonderland appraisal. Once we do, we'll run that through some folks with the city, Rich Fiskay, who's not able to be here tonight. He'll put the finishing touches on some of his research about potential tax revenues down there, and we can throw that all into a comparative budget to show you about where both of these projects sort of land in terms of cost, overall cost, and also cost to Revere when we run sort of reimbursement projections on them. We got to continue working on everything that pushes and pulls these schedules, mainly the culvert. The culvert, if we're building on site, either with the Keep the Field House or not, you're gonna hear a lot about the culvert, because we're gonna be pretty much designing that to construction point during schematic and design. We're really gonna need to do a lot of work there. I have a feeling that this committee at some point is gonna have to approve a hydrology study of that whole line. That might be done by the project's engineers. It might be done by one of the companies that have worked with the city already on this line, but I have a feeling the whole line is going to need to be studied to inform the project of exactly what we would do on our segment on site. So that has to happen. Permitting, I said earlier, is relatively neutral, but I think we'll go into a little more detail there. We'll lay out the sequence of events that really has to happen for Article 97. It's a relatively complex sequence of events and approvals. We think it's all possible. It all fits within the schedule, but it's a lot of process. And we do need to keep talking about that temporary parking on Ambrose Field, what the impact will be to the school, to the city. How will we get people safely back and forth? Traffic study will come in when we have that. We'll review what that tells us with the committee. As I noted, we'll be doing some comparative cost updates that we hope that we'll definitely be talking about in December. And the last piece here that I wanted to schedule tonight, as we have a meeting in 2 weeks. We'll definitely be holding that meeting on the 16th. I want to run through draft presentations of whatever we are putting in front of the school committee and city council at that meeting. I would like those presentations blessed by this committee. I would like this committee's input Maybe we add stuff, maybe we take stuff out, but I want you folks to see on the 16th what we would like to get on the December 21st school committee meeting and the January 10th city council meeting. And I'm noting here that I'm going to reach out to these groups, our reps from the city council and the school committee who are on this committee, the building committee, in the coming days, and try to get a meeting maybe next week together, a Zoom, to just talk through it. What do you think the school committee and city council want to see, et cetera. So I think we'll ask for some Stacy and Susan and Dr. Kelly's time, along with Patrick and Jerry and Mayor Arrigo, to get that stuff figured out. And those dates are there. We're going to ask to get on those agendas. I think we should pick a day for a community forum. I tend to think it should fall in January so we can run that same presentation through it. But I'm open to whatever days are better or worse. I think that's something we really should just get scheduled tonight, pick a date so we can get some advertisements out there and plan for that stuff before the holiday.
I agree, Brian. This is Patrick. I think it's something that just get off the plate. There's definitely a little bit of a conversation and yearning to want to have some information and get more information out there. So it can't hurt.
Excellent. And I'll be in touch, Patrick. I know you reached out to me asking about this exact topic, and that's why I wanted to get yourself, the mayor, Jerry, in a meeting with all of us and the designers next week, run through what we think the presentation should address. Then we can draft it up, bring it back to this committee in 2 weeks on the 16th. And then it can still be edited between then and when these other meetings are. But I'd like to get everyone's input who's on these boards and committees on what those people want to see, and work with Perkins Eastman to get that all consolidated into a presentation. Does anyone have any suggestions for when a good time in January? Are there any times to avoid in January for a community meeting? I'm just looking at my calendar as I mentioned that. We can, I can follow up with the school folks, but I guess for this committee is, if anybody had a strong feeling on when it should be or shouldn't be, let us know tonight. Otherwise, we're gonna pick a date and make it work. I don't see any hands up. That's all we had for you tonight. Any committee members have any other questions before we can move on, check if there's any new business and public comment? Sounds good. I think we'll move on. Any new business, committee members, new items to talk?
Brian, can I take us back to what you said before about picking a night tonight for the community forum?
Yep.
I think it would be good if we actually do that and start getting a date out there, so that people will have plenty of notice.
I agree. And I guess I'm just looking at the calendar. The first is, the Sunday this year. So I would say the week of the 3rd or the week of the 10th. One of those days we should be out there, a Tuesday, a Wednesday, or a Thursday. So 4, 5, 6, 11, 12, 13. Does anybody on other boards have dates that already have meetings those nights?
The one thing I'll say though, Brian, I think that it would be an appropriate courtesy to the city council to have that meeting with them if on the 10th and do the community forum after that.
Yep.
I'll let Patrick, I don't know if Jerry's here, weigh in on that, but I think that would be a good thing to do.
Good point. Because we could talk about it at the council meeting and then have the community forum after, sure.
So I'd say maybe that might hone us in on maybe the 12th or the 13th as a target date, Wednesday the 12th or Thursday the 13th. And I don't think those are any of our meeting days. Does anyone have any objections to the 13th, January 13th?
Stacy's open.
Okay.
Works for me.
Brian, the 13th is actually when we're scheduled, if we go every other Thursday.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that.
I
That
was
would
just
be
trying
our,
to do that.
yep, that would be our Thursday.
So how about the 12th? And then we can review the results of it even better. So how about Wednesday, the 12th?
Sure. Fine for Stacy.
Sounds good.
Okay, I think we were running those
Diane?
in the evening. Dr. Kelly, I'm not sure if we lost you, but do you think the 12th works for you? January 12th, Wednesday night?
Sorry, it does. I can do the 12th.
Okay. All right,
Brian,
we'll
is
look up.
it,
Go ahead.
sorry, is it safe to assume that that will still be a remote rather than in person? Just from a planning
question.
standpoint.
Yeah, I'd have the, I was assuming so, but is that a
Okay.
safe assumption, Dr. Kelly, other folks?
Yeah, we have, one of the benefits that we've learned from COVID is that more families can engage remotely than they can in person. So I
True.
think that we should still look at doing a Zoom webinar.
Mhm.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, excellent. So we'll, and I think we're always doing them. I forget, but we did them all at the same time in the evening and it was a little later than these meetings. So we'll check that. And Perkins Eastman, we can maybe mock up some sort of ads, invites for that and get them distributed. And I think between now and the 16th, I think will the team be sort of putting our heads together and working on a little, a history of what the project has done and what options we've gone through, and then running into this sort of more current info that you folks are seeing on a bi-weekly basis of what the options are now after we show them the history, what the schedules are now, what the potential budgets are. So I kind of like to run the same presentation through all three of those meetings.
Dr. Kelly, can we work with your communications? Is she a director? Is that her title? We did that for the last community meeting and that was quite successful. She did a great job. We sort of fed some graphics and data and she helped come up with that.
Absolutely,
It's
yep.
Great.
And
Excellent.
I think you have Ann's email. If not, you can email me and
I
I
do.
can put you together again. Okay.
It's been a few months, but I definitely have it. Thank you.
Okay. Excellent. So we'll do December 21st school committee, January 10th city council, the 12th community forum, and we will have a meeting on the 13th. I suppose the last question that we'll be thinking about it, but at the meeting on December 16th, our meeting, I guess we should decide whether we're meeting on December 30th, but I tend to think that we can look at what we've got done on the 16th and decide at that point. But the Thursday building committee meeting on December 30th to me is, I think, a maybe until our next meeting in 2 weeks. That I expect to be a tricky week for some folks.
Sounds good.
Okay, and also, Brian, will you be reaching out to have a meeting with us, myself, Stacy and Diane? And then again with the counselors before the 16th, so that you'll have more ideas of what we want on the agenda?
Yeah, I'll zip you folks an email in the morning and just do a little schedule comparison. I want to see, I'll talk to Perkins Eastman first. I want to just blank out some dates that we know don't work for us and give you a little, here's what we can do next week and see what works for the three of you and the three of the folks on the city council.
Great, sounds good.
Sounds good.
Excellent. I think all we have left here is public comment. If you know how to raise your hand, that would be easiest. We'd need a name and an address. Otherwise, if you don't know how to raise your hand, just speak up and we can figure it out. Any public comment?
I want to note that Debbie Colleran did put a comment in the chat, but Debbie, because this is a public meeting, we need the voice recording. If you want to say that question, or I can read it for you, you just have to give your information.
Okay. I will say that we're going to be, like I mentioned earlier, we're going to be doing a whole lot of detailed study on both of these, either of these places in the next phase after they're chosen. So traffic is going to be dynamic straight through when we're building this building, and we'll get a lot of thought. We'll get a lot of study. There are no other questions. That's all we have. Thank you, folks, for your time.
Thank you, Brian.
Somebody want to make a motion to
Yeah,
adjourn?
I was
Motion
just
to
gonna say
adjourn.
something. Second.
All right, we will do a roll call for adjourning the meeting. Michael Picardi,
Yes.
Mayor Arrigo, who should be noted, arrived at 5:53 PM. Sorry, I should have mentioned that earlier.
No worries. Yes.
And Stacy Rizzo,
Yes.
Susan Gravellisi,
Yes.
Dr. Kelly,
Yes.
Carl Svensson,
Yes.
John Perella,
Yes.
Jennifer Hayes,
Yes.
Nick Rystrom,
Yes.
and Patrick Keith.
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you, everyone. We will see you in 2 weeks.
Have a good one. Be safe.
Bye, guys. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.